Bonjour. Greetings, everyone. I'm deeply honored to welcome you to this very important gathering on reconciliation here in Canada. It's to honor our children, to make sure they understand where they come from. The prayer is about, the Creator to guide us in all of this very important event. Without this national words, Gijemado, Gimegagizamigo, Mijawanishinam, Migidamagtoishinam, Ikanobishinam, Minashkinamishinam, Gijawanjigain, Kiminotzian, Nimagim stable tamang, and English Chingan Gagizimigo is young, Shomis, Nashigomiwakigamido Katamang, Gamanjabinikwang, Nibe, Gamanjogit Namo, Kinagigo Magamjumaji, Nakutan, and Shomis, Ajogain of Magamitagoshinam, Amano Chakra, Tunagiziminigo is young, Simosetang, Angela Nakamano, Dejwabanung, Agipishimijan, Kaningizagitong, Shanum the Gagibish-Kinamo, Yang Nakudan, Ningabion, the Gagi Nagatamo, Tojanjig, and the Gagi Majo, finished Nakutan, Wabalang, what he had no way to Ganis Majan, Nakudan and Kinagago, Gagimish-Kinamo Yang, and the Gamikidan, Mijoan Mishnam, Mijoan Mishnam, Mijoan Mishnam, Mijoan Mishnam, regrets.
Dante, Anin, for those of you that don't know, my name is Ray Coco Stevenson. I was given the name Walking Wolf over 35 years ago. We're going to get things started with a song that I composed over 20 years ago. I use it as an honor song.
Hi, I'm Brenda Gunn, the Academic and Research Director at the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation. Today marks the beginning of Truth and Reconciliation Week 2022. We're so excited to have you join us to learn about Indigenous peoples' languages, culture, as well as the history of residential schools, including hearing from residential school survivors themselves. This year, the NCTR is continuing the conversation to remember the children who were taken from their homes and forced to attend residential schools. We want to make sure that everyone in Canada has the opportunity to hear from survivors and hear their truths, including the truth that many children did not make it home. Last year, the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation came after the uncovering of graves of many missing children. Since that time, the spotlight on the history of residential schools has faded a little. But it's important that Canadians continue to learn and relearn this history. This year, we have an opportunity to continue the conversation. Reconciliation is a long journey, and it's not one that survivors and organizations that work with survivors should have to endure on their own. Everyone in Canada has an obligation to move reconciliation forward. This week, take the time to learn the role you can play in reconciliation. Listen and ask questions. Take the truths you learn and champion them. Also, remember to have empathy for what took place. Thank you for joining us.
I am the turtle. I represent new life. I have witnessed creation and carry the laws of time and life on my back. I represent healing, wisdom, spirituality, and protection. Today, I ask you to remember the children of residential schools and take what you learn and share it so we can all heal. Remember, with truth comes wisdom and a new respect for generations to come.
I am the eagle. I fly high in the sky. I carry your prayers to the Creator. I represent respect, honor, strength, courage, and wisdom. With other birds, I bring the seeds of life. As we take this journey together, I will watch over the children, honor them, and ask you to listen to the messages shared with you today through story and song.
I am the buffalo. I am here to guide you and give you sustenance. I'm always here for you, even when you are called back to the Creator and the physical life comes to an end. Today, I want you to remember that so many are on an important healing journey. Each carries important truths that we need to hear and respect.
I am the polar bear. I am here to help you heal both your mind and body. The healing medicine I carry came from the elders. I share this with you so you too can help others. I ask that you share what you hear today. And remember, never stop learning, never stop exploring, and never stop loving. This is my medicine.
You're going to be hearing, and we're hearing this more often nowadays, is that word survivor. What does that really mean? I see myself not only as a survivor, but someone who's thriving. I'm thriving for the fact that when I say I'm a survivor, I could sit here in front of all the groups that are watching this film, or I could go to any venue in this country and say, this is what I survived. I'm talking about what happened in those schools. Many people think, and many people have told me, you know, my experience wasn't so bad in those schools, or you were in a boarding school. You should have been lucky. Well, all too often what they're doing is in that mindset, they're comparing boarding schools like places like England, where the upper middle class and all the other people, or even places in the United States where upper middle class were placed in schools for an education. Well, that wasn't the mindset when they sent us to the schools. I look across this area, and where our elders used to live here in the village, I used to see that bus going every fall, and we used to wonder, where is everybody going? Until I was put on that bus, and I went through that whole process for 6 years of saying why no one ever talked about what happened to those schools. Now I could talk about it as a survivor. That's what I survived. I'm able to talk about that experience. And even some former employees of the schools will stand on their roots. We gave you an education. You were treated well. Look at what the Department of Indian Affairs has put on TV, and they show how happy you were. And this is all propaganda. When we say propaganda, they try to paint a picture of you, that Indian child, you, that Indigenous child, being happy, playing games and sewing, working in big sewing rooms, or just being that ordinary child, as they call us. And some of the propaganda was saying they're taking this boy away from abuse and away from isolation, and giving him the opportunity to mix with the mainstream society. But they didn't do that. And that's what we're saying, as we as survivors are going to dispel that myth. We're going to tell you the truth because that is our position as survivors. And when we talk truth and reconciliation, I have an obligation, not only for my own healing path, but to further educate people. And I say people, it's the people who've heard different stories. And when we say reconciliation, that means what are we going to do about these stories? We say each story is sacred and they have to be treated with respect and gentleness. But believing that concept, that I am in front of you, what I tell you is the truth. Because if I did not tell you the truth, then my journey was not worth it.
Our survivors, their stories, and their truths deserve dignity and respect. One way we can pay respect is by listening intently and with an open heart.
Hello, my name is Andrew Carrier and I'm the Minister responsible for residential and day school survivors for the Manitoba Metis Federation. I'd like to welcome all the teachers and all the students that are here today, and I hope that you pay attention to all our stories and understand that we are survivors and that we are on a path for healing. Being a product of our education, I do speak 2 languages. I also studied Latin and Spanish. So I'm very fortunate that I was able to, in spite of being abused at the school, at the elementary school, I was able to obtain assistance in the sense of counseling and so on to deal with the anger. Unfortunately, those systems was not available for my parents, who they themselves suffered sexual abuse and went to, unfortunately, alcoholism and anger and other issues that made it very difficult for them to do well in society. So unfortunately, we've been let down by our educational system in the sense that they're trying to help us, but in reality, what they've done is they eliminated the child and they eliminated our culture. And thank God that we're able to have knowledge keepers today that are able to help us to regain our culture. But we're very close to extinction in the sense of losing our knowledge keepers who are dying every day. And that's the previous generation. So my father spoke Michif, my grandfather spoke Michif. Unfortunately, I learned French. And that is unfortunate because we lost our culture. And I was able to gain an education in spite of being abused. But like I said, what was available, the big difference between my generation and my father's generation is that there were counselors available to help us to deal with our anger and our frustration. Being a victim of child abuse, it causes an increased trauma on how you deal with how you feel about yourself, as well as how you deal with your own children. When I spoke with my mom and dad about why they were not there to protect me, I remember distinctly when I told my mom of being sexually abused by the priest, and she slapped me and she said, "Je veux pas entendre parler," which means I don't want to hear about it. So it was ingrained upon them to protect the church for whatever reason. However, when my father found out about it, he became extremely angry. We changed school because of that particular situation to get away from that priest who was still there and continuing to abuse, we would imagine, other children. Being a victim also, personally, I felt that I was ashamed of what happened, and I took responsibility for me. And this was really difficult. The challenge is that the system, our educational system, and our law system, and our health system let us down in the sense that when we asked for help, we never got that help, whether it be from our parents, our teachers, or even when we go to the police, they seem to turn a blind eye, and especially the church. The church would just move that individual around once there was charges of or allegations of sexual abuse or anything else. But the priest is one element. The teachers, who were predominantly nuns at that time, were also very abusive to us as Métis children. And it was very clear to my mind how they separated the children in the classroom. All the blonde-haired kids and the white, fair-skinned kids were to the right of the teacher, and all the Métis and First Nation kids were to the left. And Introduction to Catechism was really interesting because to her right were the angels and to her left were the devils. And I always sat there and I said, well, why am I the devil? But throughout religion and catechism, they influence right from wrong, and they would provide images of hell, and would always reinforce that the angels go to heaven, and this is what it looks like, and you will burn in hell. For this reason, there's a lot of us that are in denial and in pain, but we need to recover, and we need to really look at how to stop the pain and go from that process. So my road, my healing path has been a long path, and it's taken a lot of years for me to be able to speak to you today without breaking down in emotional crying, because it's really challenging. Because when you think about it, you're reverting yourself to when you're 7 years old and you had no control, and then you remember what happened at that time. And after the abuse, the teacher saw that I was abused, and she took me to wash me and called me petit sauvage, mon petit torieux, words throughout that whole summer, which made it very difficult for me to be able to concentrate in school because of the a fear that I would be sent to the principal or to the priest. I don't know if the priest was the principal, but that's where we would go to confess our sins. And tell me, what does a 7-year-old have to confess for? What kind of sins did we have other than being Métis or being Aboriginal? So the challenges we have as we are going through the healing process, we're thankful for the residential and day school and the Truth and Reconciliation to be able to learn from that process and not go back. But there are a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of trauma that we're facing with. It took a lot for me to get over my own anger. And
my name is Richard Kistabish. I'm an Anishinaabe, and I am number 44. I went to, in 1955, I went to the residential school named Pensionnat Indien de St-Marc-de-Figuery. And I stayed there for 10 years. I heard the story when I get out of the residential school. The story happened in South Africa when the Prime Minister was participating in a Commonwealth conference. At that time, he criticized the apartheid in that country. But someone replied to him, what do you do with the Indians in Canada? So he replied that he was taking care of them in a good way. But actually, that was the opposite. So in order to promote what he said at that conference, he gave money to people to make documentary about the residential school, how well we've been treated, how well the Indians people are being well treated, you know, living in a reservation, have a free house, free meal, free medication, free education. And to show that, he built residential school, like the residential school in Amos. It was, the opening was done in 1955, and I attended the first year for 10 years. But actually what happened at the beginning was right away we've been forbidden to speak our language. Our clothes are being taken away. Everything was being done really rough. It was really rough because they cut our hair, they wash us in a smelly things that is supposed to get rid of the poo lens, and from there it was bad every day. But one day they decided that they have to show, they had to use a camera, they're gonna perform the picture. So every time they took a picture, we dressed very well. We dress, like we are going to the church and we pray God with all the nice things, the suits that we have, tie that we wear as a boy, and the girls wearing dresses, nice dresses. And one day we had a big visitor, the master of the Catholic Church in Canada. He came there and all the kids were standing beside the road before his arrival, and he was in this big, tall Cadillac, black one, like a rock star. He slowed down a bit when he reached, and then he got off and he started to tend his hand in order for us to kiss his ring or something like that. And sometimes he used the cross to be kissed by the kids. Everything looked so good, because we were well dressed. We have the same shirt, the same pants, the same shoes, everyone, and the girls wear the same dress, the same thing. It was beautiful, it was nice. And we were wondering why we have those clean suits, clean clothes for a visitor that we don't know the meaning of this. So every time that we have some visitors, distinguished people they call it, we have to be dressed in a proper way and wear nice clothes. And one day they have this documentary that took place. So when they take pictures, we change for the picture. And one day, a big star hockey came, Jean Béliveau. Jean Béliveau, wow! All the kids changed again. They were well dressed, they were well combed and everything. Everything was perfect. We looked so clean when he came, and they have the video on that. They have also a picture of that. We have those pictures at the site of that residential school. You can see the pictures of Jean Béliveau giving a trophy to a small guy. And also we have a big star de la chanson française, québécoise, Félix Leclerc showed up one day. We didn't know who he was, but every time that at that particular time, we've been dressed very, very, very well. And we were learning a song from his repertoire. That was fun to be like that, We've been treated like stars in a sense. But as soon as they disappear, those guys, the bad things happen again. If you're not doing the right thing during the visit of that, you get punished. And you get punished severely. In order to remember that every time we have that kind of visit, you have to behave yourself. You have to conduct yourself as a white man. So we have white dresses, we have white suits, and everything was perfect. This is how we've been treated. And once in a while, we have other visitors also. We have deputy ministers that showed up there to visit the place. And we have also other distinguished people that attend to visit us. And at that time, each time we have a new dress. Right after they leave, bad things again happen. We've been raped, we've been beaten, we've been kicked, we've been deprived of meal, we've been really treated not like human beings. I don't think dogs have been treated like that. So it was a propaganda. When we saw after I left the residential school, I saw the documentary, and I was so mad at that because everything was not true. It was true for a couple of minutes, but behind the scenes, it's horrible stories happen, horrible things. So we have to remind people of that by telling our stories, what really happened, and the sad stories. Since I've been out of the residential school, I met a commitment, personal commitment to myself. Never again. That was the commitment that I had. So I take all the opportunities that was offered to me to speak out about the situation, about the residential school and what happened. So you can trust now the system that every time that you've been mistreated, please speak out. This is the only way that we could put an end definitely on these kind of treatment of us. And keep fighting. Give hope. I give you hope, and get hope that these kind of things will never happen again. And it's in your power now, because us parents have been true to that kind of system, so we know exactly what treatment that you should have at the school. So you can trust on us for that. No problem at all for the future on that.
My name is Claude Joli-Coeur. I'm Commissioner of the National Film Board of Canada. I'd like to give you some idea of what we're doing at the NFB to try to transform our relationship with Indigenous peoples and bring about lasting change. It was in 2017 that we introduced our first ever Indigenous Action Plan. It features 33 commitments to guide us as we implement the recommendations of Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It also seeks to address the concern of Indigenous creators about inequities in Canada's production landscape. It's a plan that was developed in consultation with our Indigenous Advisory Committee. It's an ambitious plan and needs to be. Because for too long, going back to the NFB's early years, the relationship between the NFB and Indigenous peoples was just one of a filmmaker and film subject. That was it. It was non-Indigenous directors who made the films, who told your stories. Beginning in the 60s, that began to change. Led by legendary filmmaker Alanis Obomsawin, who is now in her 5th decade of making films at the NFB, and other directors who have followed her, Indigenous creators have fought for their right to tell their own stories. We are so fortunate today that they did. Today our plan commits us to ensuring that 15% of production spending is on Indigenous directed projects, which we have achieved. Working with Indigenous partners, we have helped to develop industry guidelines for the production and distribution of works with Indigenous content. Our Indigenous cinema webpage now features more than 250 Indigenous-made works, with a growing number in Indigenous languages. These online works are also adapted for educational use on our campus learning portal. Today, the NFB and the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation are partnering to digitize and preserve the memory of thousands of testimonials. And I'm so glad that we have our first ever Director of Indigenous Relations to help us bring the goals and ideals of our action plan to life. We are dedicated to ensuring that the NFB continues down the path of transformation and reconciliation with humility, with hard work, and with a commitment to Indigenous stories, to education, and to a richer representation of Indigenous peoples throughout our organization. Thank you.
Part of Truth and Reconciliation is hearing the truth. Join me in thanking the survivors for sharing their truths with us today. Kinanask Thōtin-awāsis.